Hi, thank you for joining Gypsy Studios for our first video painting tutorial. We're pretty excited to do some more of these, and this is our first one, so give us feedback if you have any. If you need more clarification, more steps, less steps, more time. Remember, you can always press pause if you need to catch up and keep yourself paced that way. So hopefully you have a great time. What we're going to do today is paint an ostrich, and it's a really fun ostrich, and the best part is that you can use whatever paint colors you have at home or your favorite colors or whatever you want. It's going to be a little bit more of a playful ostrich, not necessarily an exact, realistic looking ostrich. So let's play. To get started, I'm going to have you guys get out yellow paint and black paint to start. After that, we're going to use all sorts of colors, but and whatever colors you have at home, honestly, whatever is easiest accessible. And also 3 brushes, hopefully, even, honestly, even 2 will work just fine. Hopefully a big sort of brush for the background, and then a smaller pointed brush if you have one. Middle brush is just nice to make it a little bit easier on your hand so it doesn't get tired. I'm also going to have you get a water jar out and just to rinse your brushes in. And then also, I'm using a palette knife, but you can use an actual, like a butter knife at home. You can help your kids with this if they're doing this on their own right now. Anything to help scoop the paint out of these little jars, or if you're using paint from a tube, you can just squirt it onto whatever you're using to mix your paint on. I'm using palette paper, but you can also use paper plates. Whatever you have at home works. Acrylic paint dries hard, so it'll mess up anything if it's like already plastic or something like that. It'll be really hard to get off. So I would suggest something that you can throw away. So palette paper, and then lastly, I'm going to have you get some sort of rag, dirty rag. The paint doesn't come out of cloth either, so you might want to get yourself an apron or something, or wear something you don't mind if it gets paint on it. And this is great for just dipping your brush on after you rinse it out in the water, so that it's not dripping down your canvas when you go to use it on the canvas. So that's that. So to get started today, let's give ourselves, with a knife or a palette knife, or squeeze it on your palette paper, a little bit of yellow. Okay? You don't need a ton, just 1 scoop should be plenty. Now, we're not going to be using this paint very thick. It's just really lightly applied to the canvas because it's like you're drawing. So I don't really like drawing on a canvas. Kind of sometimes can affect the canvas and create like ridges and stuff, and it can damage the canvas, and sometimes we get too detailed. And when you're talking about painting, it's a lot looser. You want to not be worried about little details like this. In fact, you can hold your paintbrush even further back than you would normally hold like a pencil or a pen. So with your yellow paint, what we're going to do is draw on there. And don't worry, because acrylic paint is awesome and super forgiving. So if you get something in the wrong spot, don't worry about it. Just leave it there, leave that mark there, and say, okay, so like for example, right now we're going to do the head shape. So say you got your head shape too small. Don't worry about it. Just leave it there and draw the bigger head shape, okay? So make sure you always draw the right one first before you try and get rid of anything. So I know some of you are going to try to erase somehow, and there is a way to do that, but I would probably just avoid that because you don't need to. Acrylic paint dries and then you paint over it, just right on top of it, and you'll cover it. So you don't have to worry about that. The yellow paint actually is the lightest color that we can do for that reason, so that it's easy to cover if you get something in the wrong spot. So with that, let's get started. So get a little bit of yellow paint on your brush. Again, this is very light. You're gonna apply this really lightly. All that needs to happen is you need to be able to see the lines on here to move forward. So you're gonna paint over all of this. You're not really gonna see your yellow lines after you're done. In the end, you won't even know there's yellow lines on there. So don't worry too much about this. Just try and get the basic shapes in right, okay? So a little bit of yellow paint, and we're gonna start with the head. We're not gonna put it straight in the middle because it's kind of boring. So we're gonna move it a little bit off to the right and a little bit high, kind of like around right here, okay? So to get started, if you just move your hand around in a circle like this, that's the best way to get started because you start building muscle memory. Your hand starts saying like, oh, okay, that's how you do a circle. So you get it like this, and at some point you get a little closer and you actually just draw it on there. Okay, even if there's a couple, that's fine. Maybe you just do woo, 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 woo. Okay, until you are happy with a circle, okay? Great. Next, get a little bit more yellow. And again, it's really light. See how you can see it, you know, just barely. I'm gonna do it a little bit darker just for you guys so that you can see it. And now we're gonna do the neck. We're gonna make it kind of thin at the base right here, right under the head. And it gets a little bit thicker, sort of like a tree trunk, all right? One. Two, like that, okay? Next, we're gonna do a line right down the center of the face, okay? And that's for our eye line. A lot of people don't know this, and a lot of times when we draw faces, we draw eyes really high up, and that's because, did I just get paint in my hair? Probably, happens all the time. So that's because we think about our eyes just being right under our hair, but in the reality, if you look at the top of your head versus where your eye line is and your chin, your eye line's actually halfway in the middle of your face. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make an eye line, and instead of doing it straight across, I'm gonna cock it just a little bit tilted, okay? Just so it has a little bit of extra added interest. Okay, so maybe about like this. Okay, and this is a really faint line. It doesn't need to be very thick at all. You're just trying to get a midline. You're gonna paint over that, okay? So that's our eye line. So now I'm gonna do the eyes. And I'm just gonna draw these little curved arches here on either side of that midline. Okay, so that's one. And then we have another one on the other side, and it should be about even. So I think this one needs to be a little bit bigger now. Yeah, like that, okay? So these are gonna be our eyes. They're off to the side, the ostrich, and we're even gonna do little eyelashes and stuff, but not yet. Okay. Now we're gonna do the beak. So the beak is kind of a, sorry about that. Just that, it kind of hurts. The beak is kind of a funky shape. So I like to think of it as like a spaceship. So we're gonna do the top part of the spaceship right here and basically create like a little rainbow here, okay? It's like a rainbow shape. And then our spaceship, okay? And once you have that, you can actually paint that shape in. So once you're happy with your spaceship shape, let me make sure, it's a little wider on this side, so I'm just gonna do maybe a little bit wider on that side too. Then you're gonna fill it in with your yellow paint. You'll notice that this yellow paint doesn't fully cover the white canvas. It still kind of shows through. Don't worry about that. We're gonna go over it again with another layer a little bit later, once it dries. Okay. So after you have your spaceship, we're gonna do a little bit of additional things on the head. So ostriches' heads aren't like totally round like that. They have some little interesting shapes going on. So what we're gonna do is right on top here, we're gonna make it a little bit taller. I usually have kind of a tall little bump here on the top. Right there. And then we're gonna do extra little bumps right here. Okay, so we're just getting the head shape a little bit more. And it'll also help define the eyes a little bit more. Okay, so you have like 3, you're almost giving your little ostrich like a crown or something, like that. Okay? And then we're gonna do the same thing, but down here. We're gonna give him a little bit, some cheeks here. Cheeks. Like that. And then a chin. And you know what? I'm noticing I don't like how my neck goes in right here, because when I stand back, it looks kind of like it's going off. It's like not quite thick enough. So I'm just gonna go a little bit over here, just a little bit. And see how I just leave my other line there? Don't worry about it. Okay? We're gonna stop right there. You can put your little brush in your water, and we're gonna start working on the background a little bit. So we're gonna do the background first. We're gonna fill that in fully, and then you're gonna have to let that dry until it's totally dry to the touch. Like you have to be able to touch it and it doesn't get any paint on your finger. And if you take your canvas and you tilt it to the side, you can kind of see if it's a little shiny in places, that means it's still wet. Okay, so make sure it's totally dry. You can pause the video at that point. Once you're done with the background, you'll pause it, let it dry, and then restart it once it's dry, okay? So I got my palette knife again. Go ahead and grab a knife or squirt some new paint on your palette. And I would say at least like 2 scoops of black. You might need more, but that'll be a good start. You can always add more if you need it. And then I'm gonna get my biggest brush. Biggest brush you have, dip it in the water, and then wipe it on your paint towel, paint rag. Okay, so now that we have our ostrich, we're gonna do the background with black. So this you do wanna cover fully, and you're just gonna go right up to the outside edge of your lines. Now, if you have any lines on there that are in the wrong spot, and let's say you had a line that's like out here or something, and you're like, that's the wrong line, okay, it's yellow. Well, this is a great time to cover that up. Okay, so you can just go right around here, and you don't have to get too specific and too crazy about, you know, getting close here. If it's easier, you can use a smaller brush when you get close to the ostrich head or neck, so that you can manage it a little bit better. Another thing, if you're using an easel that has a lip at the bottom, make sure that you go all the way to the very bottom edge with this black paint. And you don't have to, but you can definitely paint the edges if you want at this point. Or you can go back and do it later with black. If it's getting really dry, sometimes adding a little bit of extra water to your paint, not to your brush necessarily, but to the paint, Kind of helps revive it and make it go on a little bit more smooth. Looks like I'm gonna need more paint. I'm gonna start with one more scoop, see if that gets me through. Okay, make sure you get all your little white canvas bumps covered. And before you put your paint away, I'm gonna get a tiny bit more black. Before you put your paint away, make sure to also paint the eyes in with this black color. So I'm going to switch brushes for that to the little brush that I was using before. Okay, so it's gonna look a little creepy for a minute. Sorry. Okay, make sure, I think this one needs to be a little bigger now. All right, that looks good. And we're gonna come back in with black again later. It's probably been enough time that you can rinse your brush and do one more coat of yellow on that beak. Okay, so I'm rinsing my brush and I'm wiping it, my little brush, and I'm wiping it on the rag. Oops. I don't want to dip straight into the paint pot. I'm going to dip into the yellow that's on my palette already and do one more coat. There we go. And that should cover it. A little bit of black still on my brush. Okay. So now we let it dry, all right? And pause your video, let it dry. Once you come back and see that it's no longer shiny, then we can get started, okay? Okay, we're back. My painting is dry. Hopefully yours is too. Let's get started. So this is kind of the fun part, guys. This is the part where you get to pick your colors and kind of go crazy. My suggestion is to pick colors that are similar. So For example, I'm gonna do pink. So if you are gonna do pink, if you add any other colors, I'm gonna choose about 3 colors. So I would limit yourself to 3, maybe 2 colors. And if you're gonna do pink, that's red plus white. You wanna kind of do colors around this area that are near that color. Okay, if you're doing green, for example, you would wanna do like greens and blues, maybe some yellow. The thing you want to avoid doing is something like completely opposite. So like, let me just move this for 1 second so you can see the whole color wheel. So what you want to avoid doing is something like orange and blue. So if you do orange and blue, you're going to end up with brown, turns into mud. If you do red and green, so something directly across on the color wheel, is going to turn to mud. So red and green, mud. Purple and yellow, mud. So you want to kind of stay in an area. So like these or these colors. So go ahead and pick some colors. I'm going to pick 2 right now. I'm going to do some purple, red, and I'm getting white. So everybody should get white. White needs to be mixed with every single color you're using. So I'm going to show you how to do this part. Open your paints. Okay. So now I'm going to get my palette knife, wipe it off, make sure all that color is off. Turn this over just in case it has black. All right, so I'm gonna get a scoop of red and wipe it off, and a scoop of purple. And then wipe that off. All right. Oh, one more. I'm gonna do a big, well, maybe 2 scoops of white, or 3. You're gonna need a good amount of white. Okay. Wipe that off or put it in your jar here. Okay, now I'm gonna use a middle-sized brush just for mixing. If you don't have a mid-sized brush like this, go ahead and just use your small brush, okay? So I'm gonna get this wet, wipe it on my cloth, and I'm gonna start with the purple one. So to start, I'm gonna pull a couple scoops of this white into a little pile on the side here. And then I'm gonna add some purple to it. Maybe 2 scoops of that. Let's see what color comes up here. And then mix it together, blend it with part of that white, only part. You don't want to use all the white because the other white is going to be for your other colors. So each color you use, I think I'm going to do a little bit more purple in it. So each color you use will be mixed with white, a lot of white so it stands out. Okay. Maybe a little more still. You want to be happy with your color. I want it to really pop, so. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so I'm happy with that color. Now I'm gonna rinse my brush. And with the other white that I have left there, I'm gonna add some red to it and get a pinky color. There we go. Okay. I might decide to add another color later if I feel like it. That's gonna be good for now. So now I'm gonna rinse that brush or just leave it in the water and switch to my smaller brush. The biggest thing you want with this brush, you want to make sure it's a pointed one. So if it's a little bigger than this, that's totally fine. Actually, I usually use one that's a little bigger than this for this part. but any size brush will do as long as it has a point. So now comes the fun part. So you're gonna get some purple, a decent amount on your brush, and you're gonna start pulling out feathers. Okay, so they are gonna start from the center line here and go up and completely off the edge here. Okay, so you're gonna be covering up this yellow. And you don't have to fill all of it in because you're gonna do other colors. But fill in a decent amount. Okay, do you see how I'm going from the center here and pulling up or out? That's what you want to do. Let's see. And maybe they have some kind of fun little, if you notice, do you see how it starts to get kind of like, you can see the canvas showing through? You can just add a little bit more paint if that happens. And then down here, they're going to be a little different. They're going to kind of round around this spaceship beak. And whoop, this. You can watch me first, or you can just do your own thing, but I would suggest watching every now and then to see. If you notice, I'm going a specific way with my strokes. So I'm going out on top like this. Around here, I'm kind of doing a little flip. And I'm trying to cover that edge, because at the end, you're not going to see that edge anymore. Okay, and then down here, it's a little different. And you want to go right up to your little beak. You can go out further if you want. Make your feathers kind of big. Okay, and then down here, you don't want to go out quite as far anymore on the neck. But if you go back and forth like this, it'll look pretty good. See, I'm going down, but just out a little bit. I'm trying to cover most of my yellow lines at this point, but not fully, because again, I have other colors coming in. But you want to cover up a good majority of what you see here. Okay, so there is my first attempt here. Okay. I think I might try and do this guy like that, so you really see kind of the edge of the eyes there. Now I'm going to rinse my brush. And I'm going to use my next color. the pink. And you know what? I think I'm gonna add a tiny bit of the purple into this pink. I think it might add something to it. Feel free to play around with colors and decide what you like. Yeah, kind of like that. I added a little tiny bit more red too. All right, I'm gonna go with this color. And now I'm just gonna kind of pop this in other places. Especially places where you can see through. Oops. Okay, mostly trying to get that stuff covered up. Looking good. Yeah, that's kind of cute. Okay. Now you really can do any colors you want here. It's pretty fun. I'm just gonna leave it at that, but you can add more colors in if you want. You can make it a rainbow if you want. Oh, I see one little spot that needs to be covered. These little guys right here. Just make sure that your white canvas area is covered. That's the most important part. You know what else might be fun? Maybe just some pure white. I'm gonna get some pure white. Making this up as I go. All right, let's do some white in here too. It'll kind of blend in sometimes, and stand out on its own sometimes. It's kind of fun when it starts blending a little. You don't want to overdo the blending, but it is kind of fun to see that happen too. There you go, I like that. Okay. Now, I'm gonna rinse my little tiny brush. And if you're using a bigger brush, I would switch to a small brush now for the last few details. We're gonna go back over some of this stuff with black. So if you don't have enough black, I'm gonna get myself a little bit more on your palette or your paper plate, get a little bit more. You want to make sure you have some white too. I already have white on my palette, but if you don't have any, grab some of that as well. So now that we have all this stuff on, you might want to wait. If your paint is really thick in here, you might want to wait for this part until it's dry. So pause if you're still if the painting is still really wet, okay? So now I'm gonna do an outline around this guy. Like that. And I'm gonna divide this up so you get a nice little smile. And there's little nose beep, beep holes so he can breathe. Okay, now we're gonna add a little tiny bit of black and white together. So I just got a little white and black. You want it to be pretty dark, not black all the way, but pretty dark. Okay, and you're gonna go like this and create a little arch in there. It's like kind of like a rainbow. Like that. And then you're going to do some eyelashes here, going up into your, what is this called? Feathers. And then you rinse your brush. Sorry, the eyelashes, I don't think I said. Eyelashes are with pure black, not with your light color. Did I get to the outside yet here? Yeah. Okay, and then you're gonna rinse your brush and you're gonna do a big white spot. So you just do pure white, like that, and like that, to get a cute little shine in that ostrich eye. Okay, so I stepped back and I looked at my ostrich and I decided I wanted a little more color added. So I'm gonna go back in, even though I did my finishing, I finished on my details. I'm gonna go back in and do a little bit more color. I'm just gonna add a little turquoise as well. So I also wanna show you how to make turquoise in case you wanna do the same. So it's gonna be white. I need some white. You'll also need a little bit of blue. You don't need very much of these colors. And you need a little bit of phthalo green. Okay. So now I'm gonna mix with my middle brush, just because it doesn't ruin it as much as it does the little guy. And within my white, I'm gonna add a little bit of the green and some of the blue. You know, maybe, and see how blue it gets. See if I, oh yeah, that looks good. Maybe a little bit more green in there. So it looks a little turquoise, more turquoise. That's a fun color. Do you guys like that addition? It might need to be a little more white so it blends in with the other ones. Maybe like that. That's cute. Okay, so with that color, I'm gonna switch back to my little brush again, the one that's pointed. And I'm gonna add a little bit more here. I'm gonna be careful not to go into my eyelashes here. a little more playful. And I'm going to add some white to it in a couple spots just to kind of blend it a bit more. Break it up a little with my other colors. Yeah, this way it doesn't look like I just added it right on top. Yeah, I think that's a little more playful. What do you think? I'm just adding a tiny bit more right here around the eyes so that you can see the outline of the eyes a little better. There you go. Okay. I think I finished my ostrich. So as long as you're happy with yours, when you step back and take a look, I always say every time I think, am I done? Am I finished? Am I not? What I always do is I step back and I take a look at it and I let my eye travel around the painting and I notice if there's anything that catches my eye. Is my eye get stuck anywhere and keep coming back to the same spot? If it keeps coming back to the same spot, I would work on that spot a little bit. Make sure that you're happy with it and your eye doesn't get stuck anymore. It just keeps moving around and looking at the painting, okay? So I hope you had fun. Let us know what you think, and we'd love to see your paintings. So if you followed along and you made your own ostrich, please take a picture, post it on Instagram or Facebook or somewhere and tag us so that we can see it and we can share it as well. So thanks so much. Hope you enjoyed.